Hey guys, welcome back to another edition of Friday Q&A, where each week I pick my favorite question via email and dive into the research to provide you guys with an in-depth answer to each question that I get each week. So each week someone receives lucky person receives a $20 gift voucher to an online store, which is really awesome, and you can keep sending your emails to ben@13seeds.com.au. So this week's question was awesome. It came from Georgia, who was curious. She wanted to know, how can I get enough amino acids on a vegan diet? So what I believe is one of the biggest misconceptions is that you can't get enough protein or amino acids when eating a plant-based or vegan diet. And the reason for this is because there's a lot of misinformation on the internet that says, meat's a better source of protein, these sorts of things. And this can lead to this sort of misrepresentation of not getting enough protein on a vegan diet. However, this is not true at all. And in this article or in this blog and video, I'm talking about the differences between animal protein and plant protein. So there are some differences that we'll talk about. Talk about the roles of amino acids and protein in the body. So talk about exactly what they do. And then I'm going to talk about how you can get enough protein on a vegan diet, and also the differences so you can make sure you're getting enough amino acids to support many different bodily functions. So let's just start off with exactly what amino acids are. So amino acids are small molecules, and they're actually the building blocks of protein. So when people say, oh, we need protein in the diet, what they're actually referring to is the amino acids. The reason why is because when we consume protein in the diet, what happens is we start to break down this protein into amino acids, and then these amino acids have a variety of different roles in the body that are really, really, really important. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about what those functions of protein are, the main functions. Some of them include, so protein is important for the structural component of muscle, bone, skin, hair, and organs as well. Proteins or amino acids are also used to produce hormones, enzymes, which we need that are a catalyst for all bodily functions, and also blood cells as well. And then lastly, protein is so important for the growth and repair of the cells, muscles, also involved in nerve function, and they have a role in strengthening the immune system as well. So it's really important for immunity. So there's some of the ways that protein works in the body. So you can see it's such an essential nutrient, and that's why it's a macronutrient, meaning we need it in large amounts. Protein is actually also a source of energy as well. However, it's not a preferred source. The preferred source of energy is fats and carbohydrates. So we can still get it from protein, but what happens is when we're using protein as an energy source and we've depleted those other sources, this can lead to this can basically lead to not having enough protein to be able to do all the things that I just mentioned. So it's really important that you're getting enough protein. So there are actually 20 amino acids. So some of these amino acids, we can actually make them in the body. So they're not actually considered essential, while there are actually 9 essential amino acids. So this means we need them in the diet. It's really important, and making sure you're getting enough amino acids is crucial for your health. And they include, these amino acids include phenylalanine, valine, tryptophan, threonine, threonine, isoleucine, methionine, histidine, leucine, and lysine. So how much protein do you actually need? So with the current recommended daily intakes in Australia, it's about 0.84 grams per kilogram of body weight for males and 0.75 gram per kilogram for females. And older adults require a little bit more than this. However, in my personal opinion, I think this is a little bit outdated, and I think more research now shows that you want to be consuming, as a rule of thumb, about 1 gram of protein per kilo of body weight per day. So that means if you're a 70 kilogram female, you want to be consuming at least 70 grams of protein a day to making sure you're getting optimal protein to do all the functions that I spoke about before. If you are a person who, for example, if you're an athlete or if you're someone who works out quite frequently, you're probably going to need larger amounts of protein, or you will need larger amounts of protein. So for example, if you're an endurance athlete, you want to be eating around 1.6 grams per kilogram. And if you're a bodybuilder or a weightlifter, especially one who trains quite a lot, you're probably looking at somewhere between 2.2 grams per kilo of body weight. So as you can see, it all really depends on what you do in life, but just as a rule of thumb, 1 gram per kilogram of body weight. So do I need more protein in a plant-based diet? No, you don't. So one of the great things about plants is there are many plants that provide sufficient amount of proteins. They include things such as legumes, soy products such as tofu, tempeh, also soy milk as well, and plant-based milks are a really great source too. And then you got things such as grains, nuts, and seeds as well. In particular, hemp seeds are a really great source of protein. If you're a vegetarian though, you can also include things such as eggs and dairy, which are also a good source of protein as well. So the next question is, do I need to combine amino acids? So in the past, there was this thought that we needed to combine amino acids in the diet. The reason why is they thought that with every meal, we needed to make sure we're getting a certain amount of all of these 9 essential amino acids with each meal. However, now we know that we actually contain or store a pool of amino acids in the body. So that means that you don't need to do it with every single meal. What's more important is making sure that you're getting enough different types of amino acids throughout the day. And then whatever you don't use will sort of be stored in the body. And then if you don't get that amino acid at the next meal, it's generally going to be okay. So the main thing is making sure that you're eating a large variety of plant-based proteins like the ones I just mentioned is really, really important. And then that way you don't have to worry about mixing and matching proteins every single time you have a meal, which could be really annoying and frustrating. So what are the different sources what are the differences in amino acid content between plant-based and animal sources? So it is true that animal sources generally do have higher amounts of protein. However, this shouldn't be an issue because you can still get enough protein when eating plant-based sources. So it's really important to know what plants you should be eating in order to get enough protein during the day. And there is also a common misconception that not all plant-based proteins are incomplete, or many of them are, meaning that they don't contain all 9 essential amino acids. This is also incorrect because all plant proteins contain all 9 essential amino acids. But what the difference is between that and animal sources is that some of them may contain them in different amounts. So that's the main difference between animal and plant-based proteins, is that animal sources typically have high amounts of most amino acids, while plant-based sources have varying levels of different type of amino acids. So for example, one of the things that you should be cautious of when you're eating a vegan diet is making sure that you're getting, there are 2 amino acids in particular that you want to focus on. So legumes typically contain higher amounts of lysine and lower amounts of methionine, so that could be an issue. However, all other plant-based proteins generally contain higher amounts of methionine and lower amounts of lysine. So that means if you're typically consuming lots of legumes and other types of different plant-based proteins, you're going to have everything sorted, so you don't really need to worry. What's interesting is they actually have this score that what they do in studies to rate how well we actually digest proteins. So the score it's called the Protein Digestibility Corrected Amino Acid Score. Let's just call it PDCAAS. Now, what they do is they measure this, and you can get a score of up to 1.0 as the maximum score. So for example, most animal proteins such as meat, eggs, dairy products typically have a high score that's close to 1. However, it might shock you to know that both soy protein and pea protein have comparable scores. So soy protein contains 0.91 and pea protein 0.82. So I did manage to find also the score for hemp seeds. So hemp seeds are also a really great source as well. So whole hemp, it depends on the way you consume it. So whole hemp seeds scored 90 to 97.5, so also really high. And then hemp seed meal scored 84 to 86. So what's interesting is we don't have anything just yet for 13 seeds like hemp-based protein to know exactly what that is, but I'd imagine it'd be anywhere from the 80s to 90s based on the way that we process and make our own hemp seed protein powder. So that's really awesome. So that means that if you are on a vegan diet or a plant-based diet, that you can consume soy, also legumes, peas, and hemp seeds to make, and you're going to know that you're going to get enough protein throughout the day as long as you're hitting the amount of protein that you should be getting, which is roughly around 1 gram per kilogram per day. So how can I get enough protein on a plant-based diet? We've already kind of touched on this. So to get enough protein, you want to be including sources of legumes, soy foods that I mentioned, nuts, seeds. It's also important to note that grains and vegetables also contain protein, but in smaller amounts. But in particular, quinoa is a good source as well. So also when you're consuming plant-based proteins, you're also going to increase the consumption of other important nutrients as well, such as iron, calcium, and zinc. So there are actually a large variety of foods. I'm going to talk, just kind of reel them off to you, just so you know, and I'm going to put a little cheat sheet in there for you as well to make your life a lot easier. So you want to be consuming a lot of these foods, and they include soybeans, chickpeas, lentils, beans, including like kidney beans, pinto beans, etc. Split peas are a really good source as well. Also, you got brown rice, quinoa is another great source. And then we have like tofu, tempeh, hemp seeds, as I mentioned, are another great source. And if you're a vegetarian, you can also eat things such as dairy foods and eggs, which are awesome. Now, when it comes to getting enough lysine, that we talked about could be deficient if you don't eat enough legumes. You can actually, what you want to aim for is about 2 to 3 servings of legumes a day. So what's the serving exactly? So chickpeas, kidney beans, pinto beans, etc. are around 125 to 150 grams, lentil 100 grams, split peas 100 grams. These are all just, if you go into the blog, you can see it's just all written there. I'm not going to go through all of them, but as you can see, I've given you the serving sizes that you need in order to be able to get enough lysine during the day. So yeah, 2 to 3 servings of those, and you can have a quick look. I think that's everything for today. So we've touched on exactly what protein and amino acids are. So they're really important for structural components. They're also important for enzymes, hormones, and also for the repair of cells, muscles, nerve transmission, just to name a few, and also for strengthening the immunity as well. So it's really important that we're getting enough. We also talked about how much protein you need. So 1 gram per kilogram of body weight per day. We talked about the differences between meat proteins and plant proteins. So as I said, there isn't much of a difference, because when we look at the protein digestibility scores, they're all around close to that 1.0 mark, which is awesome. So that means you definitely can get enough protein on a vegan diet. However, like I said, the main things you want to look out for are just making sure that you're getting enough lysine in particular, because most of the other sources contain enough methionine. So basically making sure you're getting enough sources of lysine. Like I said, best choices are legumes, but I've also listed some other ones there if you don't like legumes. And that's pretty much everything. So that means I've got you covered everything you need to know about how to eat a vegan diet and get enough protein. Awesome, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Keep sending your questions to ben@13seeds.com.au, and I'll see you soon. Bye.